You're welcome back. 136 countries have agreed to set a global minimum corporate tax. The goal of this is to eliminate tax havens and make it much more difficult for companies to take advantage of another country's lower taxes. The way to work is that any company, wherever based, anywhere, pays at least 15% in every country that it operates in. Interestingly, Nigeria did not join in this agreement. Well, to tell us the backstory and maybe why and some of the things that Nigeria may or may not be losing, we have Senior Manager at Anderson, Temitope Kolade, joining us now. Good morning, Temitope. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So first of all, help us to understand how this will work. We know it's a minimum of 15% tax for multinationals. How exactly is it going to work?
Okay, thank you again for having me. Let me say first that it's not just about the 15% global minimum tax. There are two-pillar approach. Actually, the OECD started this work sometimes in September 2013 to come up with a 15-point action plan to deal with the base erosion and profit shifting activities of multinationals. And then it came down to two-pillar approach. The first pillar was basically to ensure that, number one, there will be a reallocation of profits by multinationals, because typically what has happened is that we have a digital economy, and without even having the brick and mortars, you can continue to derive profits from jurisdictions that you do not have physical presence. So with the digital economy, the idea was to then say, okay, you have earned as much as this profit in this place. Part of that profit will then be allocated to the market economy, to the market jurisdiction, and leave the others for the home countries to deal with. That's the first pillar. The second pillar was then the global minimum tax, to ensure that the profit that is also being earned is not pushed to low tax jurisdictions, such that it then also reflects the actual economic activity. So the way it's going to work going forward, really, for companies is that typically there will then be, for the first pillar approach, it would be that we're looking at 10% profits for certain multinationals. If they have as much as 10% profits, anything above the 10%, 25% of that will then be reallocated to the jurisdiction where the profits came from, right? And then that's the market jurisdiction. So you look at the likes of Facebook, Amazon, for instance, that do not necessarily have a physical presence in Nigeria. Part of their profits should be reallocated to Nigeria if Nigeria signs into this tax deal. For the second part is also to say that if there is a rate that is lower than 15%, unfortunately, Nigeria's rate is 30%, corporate tax rate is 30%. So there is really no incentive at the moment to sign in, because we have a rate that is low, that is higher than the 15%. More or less saying that if you have anything lower than 15%, you would have to have your tax revenue exported to the home countries as well. So that rate, that differential would be paid. For instance, a country that maybe has a rate of 12.5% would have the 2.5% out of the 15% reallocated to the home country, to ensure that there is a fair portion of tax that is actually paid on the income end.
Well, it sounds kind of complicated to the very simple mind. So whose responsibility will it be to show that a company, especially those who don't have, brick and mortar in a certain country, who would pursue it to ensure that this profit was made from this country, so you have to give this percentage and all that? Because, when it comes to tax, calculating and tracing it could be complicated, especially in the digital economy.
Yeah, very correct. And let me quickly add that the whole idea is that these rules will then be domesticated in the countries. So there is a model that is being worked on by all the countries that have signed in. As we know, about 136 countries across the world have signed into the tax deal already. So there would then be like a template model rule that will be worked out. And the idea is that rules like the significant economic presence rule that is meant to deal with this issue in Nigeria, and maybe the digital services tax rule that they have in France, that they have in places like India, would then be jettisoned. and then will then align with this new rule that will be in the law. So the idea would be that if you then have, there will be a global financial statement expectedly, and it would also segment the activities of the companies into the different jurisdictions where they earn the profits from. So in simple terms, it's a case of I have made 100 billion in the year USD, and then out of the 100 billion USD, I'm a country that have my own country as the United States of America, but I also have presence, though digitally, in Nigeria, in France. And so a portion of the 100 billion in terms of profits needs to be allocated to those market jurisdictions and will be taxed at the global minimum tax rate.
So some countries are reluctant to hike their tax rate, like Ireland. They don't want to. Aren't they standing? Aren't they losing? Why? What's the reason?
Okay, let me quickly also say that Ireland has now signed in. They were reluctant at the time. Same with Hungary, and the issue for them was that they were concerned about sovereignty. They were concerned about how they will be able to play with their own laws to ensure that they attract the right sort of investment. Same thing with Ireland. Ireland had a tax rate, a corporate tax rate of 12.5%. And what that meant was that if you are then raising the minimum tax rate to 15%, certain countries, certain companies who may have thought that the best place to plan their taxes and to have their location is Ireland for tax purposes will then not be encouraged to do that because there is still a 15%. So there will be other factors that would make them consider other jurisdictions beyond just the tax, right? But interestingly, they have now signed in. We're now left with countries like Sri Lanka, Nigeria, Kenya, and I think Pakistan that are yet to sign. So really, it looks like the force is going towards signing into the deal.
So Nigeria has a higher tax rate, which explains why the country does not want to sign. But is that how it's just going to be? Isn't it going to mess up the system, the global tax, this agreement? Because then, some people can still say, oh, I want to go here, I want to go here.
Correct. And that's exactly the point here, because what you want to do with the global minimum tax and this sort of arrangement is to ensure that you ease trade tensions. And for instance, companies like Amazon, like Facebook, don't want to be faced with differing tax rules for their global operations, right? They want a unified rule, and that's why exactly the OECD has stepped in to do this. So with this, it could mean for Nigeria that we are toying with some sort of trade tension. However, I understand the position of the government that there is a need to also study the law, because what it means today is that if Nigeria signs in, it basically means that you jettison whatever rule that you currently have. And unfortunately, it is taking quite a time for the OECD to also come up with this final rule, right, that companies are signing into. So Nigeria could not wait any further. That's why Nigeria basically came up through the Finance Act, the significant economic presence rule. So as it stands, it means that if Nigeria signs in today, they jettison it, and then the global minimum tax rule will not be effective until 2023. So it may mean some sort of tax revenue loss to Nigeria as well. So it's a case of which way do we go first? Do we hold on to these and ensure that we don't have any trade tensions with any of those countries where most of these big multinationals, the 100 most profitable, are located, for instance?
So do you see Nigeria changing its stance, say maybe close to 2023, in 2023?
I see Nigeria aligning, if you have to look at it quickly. As I said earlier, out of about 140 countries, it's only about 4 that are yet to sign. And typically, when rules like these apply, there are benefits to it. And because there are benefits to the rule as well, like I mentioned, Nigeria has passed into law a significant economic presence rule. And what that helps to do is to pay, there is a share of the revenue of the profits of these companies, these multinationals, that should be taxed in Nigeria. However, I would say that not much of that has been achieved, which is why we also have the Twitter conversation also ongoing, right? So if not so much has been achieved, and you now have a platform where you can achieve a bit more in terms of the allocation of about $150 million to these developing countries that can then result in taxes for them, more taxes for them, I think it's just the way to go. However, it may not give a full benefit, right? Which is the concern about sovereignty, that, oh, if I am able to do that directly, I might be able to get more tax than the 15% tax that the OECD says I should collect. But what is the framework that you have to even collect the 30%? We don't have that fine-tuned yet. So it makes it difficult to also say, I want to stand alone. I don't want to work with other countries in the globe.
Yeah, because I was going to ask, I mean, even for our local normal taxes, we talk about the mechanism to collect it. We talk about, you know, the system, you know, strong enough to handle it. And now we have a system that should help us. But, I mean, like you noted, you can't just rush into it. But also, I guess it will also be important for the country to think about the mechanism to collect this tax and not just about having the figures on paper.
You're very correct. Absolutely correct. So it's going to be a case of, like I mentioned earlier, we then have a global rule. And typically multinationals want to align with the laws because their own countries are also concerned about their global presence and their global corporate responsibility index. So if they already align into this and then Nigeria aligns into this as well, it would mean that at least there will be a fair share of tax from, you may say maybe the fair share is in inverted parentheses, for instance, because you then have the issue of, is it really fair, right? There are concerns also about, the 60% of the global profit will still go to the developed countries where these countries are residents, whereas it's only about 40% that is going down to the developing countries where the activities are really taking place. But again, like we said, the mechanism has to be in place, and this is a way to begin the negotiation. I think to be on the negotiation table, you also have to sign into the law first and then let it work for you. And then you can begin to say, oh, should we revise the minimum tax rate? Should we adjust the rules so that it's more reflective of the activities of these multinationals?
All right. Thank you so much for sharing your views with us, Temitope Kolade, Senior Manager at Anderson, talking on the Global Minimum Tax Agreement. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.